Hello, and welcome back to another episode of The Elements of Success. I am Safriana Luna, the Queer Spirit Guide, and as always, I am just happy to be with you to offer you some of the wisdom that I have gained along my path, along my journey as a teacher, as a therapist, as a spiritual leader, as a survivor, as an author, speaker, druid, all of the things. So, we are kicking off today with episode 21, recognizing self-sabotage patterns. And I know that this is such an uncomfortable topic, but it's a really important one that we explore now that we have started to have more of an understanding of parts of ourselves and how parts of ourselves work within our system. We are going to shed some myths about self-sabotage today. And just before we dive in, I want to make it so clear that every single one of us has a self-sabotage part or two in our system. So like I said, I'm Safriana Luna. I'm a licensed clinical professional counselor, and I have a degree in community mental health. So this is such a joy to me to be able to talk about what makes us healthy as humans and how we can really collectively rise together. So before we dive in, let's just check in back into our last episode. We were talking about really embracing your whole self and understanding that you have this complex system. You have a multiplicity of parts, if you will. You have this unique blueprint that is completely yours. And you have all of these parts that have developed over the course of years because of the experiences that you have been through, because of the various lessons you've learned from other people in your life, right? There are so many ways that our parts develop. But when we start to see things in this new way, that we are able to relate to our parts in different ways, we're able to uh, help them heal and help them learn and help them grow, we don't feel so trapped anymore. So, I'm curious if you did tune in to episode 20, what manager part did you notice running your day-to-day show? Did you notice that there was a particular part of you who tried to lead the way a majority of the time? I call these parts head honchos. Yes, they're managers, but the head honchos are the parts of us that have a tendency to run the show for the most part day to day. So were you able to notice that? Were you able to tune in to anybody kind of puppeteering your life, if you will? And then when did you turn inward towards compassion instead of criticism? Were you able to meet yourself with a little more gentleness maybe than you have before? I think that gosh, it's really challenging sometimes to be compassionate with ourselves. Um, we want to do our best and show up and be perfect, and we have all of these narratives that we run. And I think that it is just really, really important that we learn to make this switch, the switch out of criticism into compassion. So if that is still something you're working on, you are not alone. I think this is one of those lifetime patterns we get to work on. So today we're going to talk about how to recognize self-sabotage patterns. Yay! Again, I know it's a little bit more of a challenging topic because who wants to really own that they might be blocking themselves, right? But we are in the aether and ownership arc still, and ownership really changes the game. So self-sabotage, let's just have a working definition here. Self-sabotage is when we undermine our own goals, desires, or well-being through actions or inactions. So it's important to note that self-sabotage comes from our own action or inaction. And we can really shame ourselves for that. We can spin ourselves up, or we can take ownership and acknowledge, yes, I have this part. We all have this part. But here are some common signs that we're moving towards that self-sabotage part, or that part might be starting to take the wheel. So starting strong and then abandoning the effort. procrastinating on things that really matter to you. I know for me, one of my most common self sabotage patterns is when I keep piling things on my to do list instead of working on my novels. That's a self sabotage pattern for me. So if you are putting that thing that really is important to you off to the side again and again and again, probably a self saboteur. Creating conflict when things are going well. Oh my gosh, our system is designed for status quo. Our parts are designed to keep things the same. And so, if we're used to conflict, if we're used to chaos, if we're used to sort of tumultuousness, we will absolutely find a way to create conflict, whether within ourselves, in our family systems, at work, it does not matter, to bring us back to our status quo of that baseline chaos. We might find ourselves choosing what hurts over what helps. That is often a saboteur coming from, really people pleasing. Oh, I'm so glad you're here. I can't see. For some reason, I was literally worried I wasn't live because I can't see anybody up here, but I'm glad you're here. Good morning. When we choose what hurts over helps, it is coming from that desire to go back to status quo. Again, if you're used to hurt, if you're used to pain, if you're used to struggle and hustle, etc., your parts are going to try and bring you back to your baseline. Unfortunately, that can be the saboteur, stalling progress and keeping you stuck, staying stuck in patterns that you consciously want to change. That's really the biggest number one red flag that we have a saboteur, our self-sabotage part showing up, is when we have ourself, our parts, other parts of us that are like, I'm done doing this pattern. It's really not for me. I'm so sick of it. And yet we keep going back to that pattern. Chances are there is a saboteur in there that is working to protect us. Because again, it is so important to remember, self-sabotage is a protection mechanism. It is a protective part trying to keep us in what we consider quote unquote normal. We get to design a new normal. So self-sabotage is just protection. It exists to keep you safe from something. We're going to talk about some of those things we try to keep ourselves safe from today, because oh my gosh, it's almost mind-boggling, or it feels silly when we look at it from other angles. But again, these are just protective mechanisms. This can protect us from disappointment and failure, visibility and judgment, success and the changes that success might bring, intimacy and vulnerability, responsibility and expectations, or your own power. So, our systems are designed to protect us. We will do whatever we can to protect ourselves. Our parts will show up however they can to protect us. So, if we have put ourselves out there before and there have been perceived failures and we have been the disappointment of our family and we've heard this critique and we've been criticized and we've been brought down, and we're about to take a big risk, a saboteur might come in and say, nope, we're not doing that. We're going to do anything but that. We're going to procrastinate. We're going to run away. We're going to stop. We're going to do whatever it takes. Because what if we disappoint our family again? What if we fail and they make fun of us again? At its core, the self-sabotage is always trying to protect from something. And I think that is where we can bring in compassion when we start to recognize that. So, just an IFS lens, managers might sabotage to maintain control or avoid vulnerability. So, if sabotage is just a constant state, it's gotten into that managerial role, it is probably trying to avoid something ongoing. Exiles carry the wounds that make success or connection feel unsafe. So, they might trigger a saboteur to step in to protect from the wounds. And firefighters, of course, could be a reactive saboteur to distract from pain or prevent you from getting hurt again. So just to frame it as parts, again, they're trying to protect us. This is potentially their job. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's working in a way that serves your goals currently, though. So some common self-sabotage patterns, and you might recognize these in yourself. I really want to say just that caveat, the game here is not to shame, it is to take ownership and really be able to acknowledge the impact that we might be having on ourselves and potentially even others through our self sabotage. You might have the most important medicine in the world to gift to others, but because you are keeping yourself small or stuck, you're not able to give that, right? So it not only has an impact on you, but it does have an impact potentially on others. So, procrastination. I think we all have this one. In fact, I know right now I'm running a live butterfly immersion with my butterfly method inside my Rebel Elements community. And this topic came up big time at one of our last meetings was procrastination and how easy it is to kick the can down the road because of all kinds of things, fear of failure, the perfectionism, like all of these other self-sabotage patterns and reasons can be a reason that the procrastinator saboteur comes out and says, nope, let's just avoid that. Let's get away from that. Don't pay attention to that. Don't look over there. It's avoiding the task to avoid potential failure, judgment, loss of control, literally anything. Procrastination is simply kicking the can down the road. I think we all do it. But when it becomes a pattern that is keeping us stuck, keeping us from achieving the goal we really want, then we're in the realm of self sabotage. Perfectionism paralysis, never starting because it won't be good enough. I know that I have lived in this one for a big chunk of my life, feeling like, what's the point in doing something if it's not going to be productive, if it's not going to sell, if it's not going to be beloved by others? It needs to be perfect. It needs to be good enough. It needs to be worth something. I'm not even going to start if it's not all of those things. Gosh, we need to work as a collective to release our collective perfectionism because we're here to be human. We're here to express. We're here to play. We're not here to be perfect. There is absolutely nothing that is perfect other than imperfection. I could do the Om Pranamida Sanskrit mantra right now, but enough to say perfection really only exists in imperfection and accepting things as perfectly imperfect. So, unfortunately, these patterns lead into some of the deeper patterns, right? Self medication can come in, numbing our difficult feelings with substances, food, shopping, pornography, whatever it might be, something to distract more deeply. And that distraction in of itself, the self-medication can become a self-sabotage pattern when again it keeps us from actually moving forward with what we want to do, being who we want to be, taking action the way that we want to take action. Relationship sabotage, oh gosh, we're all so wounded and so many of our wounds happen in relationships, which makes sense why relationship sabotage patterns happen. This often looks like pushing people away before they can leave you or hurt you, hurt them before they can hurt you. You know, this just goes into hurt people. But a lot of times we will sabotage relationships that are too calm, too peaceful, because our nervous systems are again used to that level of chaos or tumultuousness, and the status quo needs to be maintained according to our parts. And so we might find ourselves sabotaging good relationships because we don't feel like we can receive them, because we don't feel like we're enough, because of all of these other potential patterns in there. Playing small, this is another one that came up in community recently. Hiding your gifts to stay safe, whether that be from criticism, jealousy, or real perceived harm. For me, when I'm not on meta platforms anymore anyway, but when I was originally back on meta platforms, I think in like 2007, I had my OG profile. Fast forward practically 2 decades, and I found myself in an unfortunate situation where I was in an unhealthy community. I left the community, and the community unfortunately decided that it was a good idea to follow me and harass and stalk me. And so I completely removed my profile, like poofed the darn thing, and I didn't come back to socials for a couple of years until I was ready to be visible again. This pattern of playing small, I just want to say, it can be from perceived harm. If you are a survivor, if you have escaped a cult, if you have lived through domestic violence, it can be a very easy pattern of self sabotage to play small because we're trying to protect ourselves from other harm. But this is where we really get to get really realistic and take ownership. And do we want to run our lives that way because of the past? No, we really don't want to. And should we care if other people are jealous of us or criticize us for doing what we're here to do? No. But our parts have adapted to survive, and survival looks like not being alone, right? So we will play small and sabotage ourselves to continue to fit in, to continue to try and find a sense of safety and thinking we're not going to be abandoned. So if you are a play smaller like I used to be, and like I still am shedding those layers, I really see you. And if it is a matter of survival and fear, I see you, I got you. And if it is just worrying about what other people think, we get to start to shed those skins. Overcommitting. This is a huge self-sabotage pattern for those of us who are overfunctioners. I myself am a chronic overfunctioner. Overfunctioners commit too much. They do too much. They take on things from other people's plates. So overcommitting can be a self-sabotage pattern, because if you're too busy to pursue what really matters to you, you're never going to get there. You're never actually going to be able to meet your own goals because you are busy meeting everybody else's. I fell into this pattern for years and years and years of taking on other people's stuff. And so, an invitation to clear your schedule more, say no more, and do what really matters to you. Negative self-talk, another huge self-sabotage pattern, because, if you criticize yourself before others can, if you point out all your flaws before others can point it out, you might feel some semblance of control. Unfortunately, if you bully yourself, it has the same physiological response in your brain and nervous system as if someone outside of you were doing that bullying. So that negative self-talk just keeps you playing small. It keeps you depressed. It keeps you in perfectionism. It keeps you in procrastination, because you are reinforcing to your system that you're not worth it, you're bad, you're wrong, you're this, you're that. So negative self-talk comes from protective parts, just like all things do. And it's trying to protect you from other people and what they might say. But I just want to, in this ownership arc, remind you that what you say to yourself has the same level of impact. So please don't criticize yourself. Try to build yourself up, because that's what we need to do. And then, of course, comparison spiraling goes hand in hand with that. If you use other people's success as proof you can't succeed, or that you'll never succeed like that your success won't look like theirs, that your story won't be theirs, you're going to keep playing small. You're not going to put yourself out there, because you are using the evidence to prove your lack of worth. So, again, no shame, no blame in these, but these are the things we need to take ownership for. If we're doing these things to ourselves, it is time to break free from them. So the real root of these self-sabotage patterns and protective mechanisms is your past. And that's why I really, as a trauma survivor myself, and as somebody who specializes in working with trauma in others, I really never want to gloss over this and be like, and it just get over yourself, brush it off, pull yourself up by the bootstraps. No, in the past, you learned that you would be criticized or punished for trying and failing. And so you realized maybe it's safer to not try. Maybe you were shamed for having desires or needs, and that you were taught that if you want things, you're only going to be disappointed. Maybe in the past, you witnessed others be hurt by their success or your success or some kind of success, and that taught you that success brings danger. An example, I don't know why this comes to mind right now, but one of my favorite singers, his dad was a singer before he was really old enough to sing, right? And his dad lost all of his money. He got this like big advance. He was under Simon Cowell, and then his career fell flat. He'd spent all his money and his success vanished. What would have happened if his child, whose dream it was to pursue the music world, didn't bring his music to the world because he saw how his dad's success crashed and burned, right? So it can be these things that we see passively. It can be these things that we have experienced directly ourselves. If you had great accomplishments, but they were minimized or blown off, that probably taught you that your achievements don't really matter. And of course, if you were given conditional love based on your achievement, you learned that failure was unacceptable. I know for me, I strove so much to impress my parents and to get good grades in school. And I got praise then, but I didn't really get praise other times unless I was performing and doing really well. And that did reinforce a pattern to me that I needed to be productive and show up and do well and not fail, or else I would not receive love. And I know that there are so many people in the world have that same story to tell. So, all of these examples to say what once kept you safe as a child isn't going to work anymore. You may have not tried, you may have played small, you may have people pleased, tried to be perfect, or numb wherever you could to survive. But what happens now when you lean into these strategies is they prevent you from really fully pursuing your life, from pursuing your desires and building the life that you want to live by your own design. So those protective mechanisms aren't protecting you anymore because you're not in the past anymore. Then we layer in internalized oppression. These are the narratives that we hold, the legacy burdens, if you will, the parts that we have adopted to survive in the societies that we live in. So, this is the burdens of capitalism, patriarchy, white supremacy, diet culture, purity culture, all of these beliefs that are force fed and passed down to us. It is time to let them go. They are not true. But capitalism tells us that your worth is determined by your productivity. So burnout becomes sabotage disguised as success. Really want you to take that in. Burnout in our society is like a badge of honor. It's like oh, wow, you're such a hard worker. Look at you go. And it's actually sabotage disguised as success because your system can't sustain that. So your worth is not your productivity. We need to unhook from that belief. The patriarchy says things like don't be too loud, don't be too much, don't be too ambitious. So playing small ends up feeling like safety. It feels so much easier to keep ourselves quiet and tiny and a part of the system, but not trying to break the system. Then we get into our white supremacy. It is telling us that perfectionism is the standard. Mistakes are a failure, so we never start. I could go on a dissertation about all the stuff that white supremacy teaches. So many things about language and how we show up and how we present our personalities and the way that we whitewash and fit ourselves into boxes. A lot of that comes from white supremacy narratives. And so when we realize that there isn't one right way to be, there is not one supreme way to be, we have a lot more flexibility, we have a lot more diversity, and we have a lot more equity in the world. But I really see perfectionism as being tied in to white supremacy, and purity culture goes hand in hand with that. Diet culture, of course, tells us our body is wrong. So you will sabotage your pleasure, your nourishment, whatever it looks like, to try and fit into the dominant system. And of course, purity culture is telling us that having desires are shameful to begin with. So you'll sabotage your joy and your sexuality. It's really hard to control people who are happy. It's very easy to control people who are miserable, who are trying, using every resource they have to simply fit in and feel like they will not be abandoned. It's so essential we recognize these are not our real beliefs. When we really go in and we scrutinize these, is productivity the right way of life? Is making a lot of money a sign that you are better than others? No, one only needs to look into our political system right now and the cover ups that are happening around rich people to know that capitalism is not a sign of moral superiority. Winning the game of money does not make you a good person. Being thin or looking a certain way does not make you a good person. Being pure and chaste and never having a pleasurable moment in your life does not make you a good person. In fact, it makes your parts more likely to come up and sabotage to get what you really need. and to protect you from these things. So these are our legacy burdens we get to not pass on, but pass away. We don't kill our own parts, but we do let legacy burdens die by healing them. So our cultural conditioning around success, this really goes back to all of those things that we were just talking about: patriarchy, capitalism, white supremacy, etc. You might have also been taught that success makes you a target, that people will resent you if you shine too much. I was certainly taught this. What I mentioned with the community earlier, it was at a time in my life where things actually looked up. I left a cult-like setting, surprise, and life got a little better, and I started to feel a little happier, and I started to share that happiness with the world, and it made those prior community members very upset. They really did not want to see me shine. And so I get it. Like, there may be bad faith actors out in the world sometimes, but that can't keep us from doing what is ours to do, or we will never find that life satisfaction. That is, again, more sabotage. I care too much about what other people think, so I'm going to keep myself small. You may have been taught that you don't deserve good things from a parent, a teacher, yourself after experiencing awful things, but you do deserve good things. We all do. You may have been taught that wanting more is greedy or selfish. Let's go back to capitalism and purity doctrine, and this idea of productivity as success and making a lot of money as moral superiority. It's not greedy or selfish for those people to want more by dominant society lens, but it is for the average person. So again, we need to really look at these lessons and ask, like, is this real? Is this actually rooted in reality, or is this a power and control story that has been passed down that I've maybe never confronted in this way before? And then there's this idea, if we succeed, others will expect too much. And this is where we get to have really good boundaries. Uh, Funny enough, I'm going through my novel right now and doing this update and whatnot. And I'm really thinking about the main character, who no one wants to let her tell other people about her powers because they're too worried that if people knew about her powers, they would want her to use them all the time. And I think that that is a real worry that we can have. If I succeed, if I make a lot of money, my family's going to want a lot of money. If I move out to my dream property, someone's going to want to come move in with me. If I am doing really well, other people are going to expect me to pick up their slack. Okay, boundaries. We get to say no. Going back to overcommitting as self-sabotage. We don't need to do that here. So if success feels dangerous, it totally makes sense that your parts will protect you from it by ensuring you do not succeed. Thereby the definition of self-sabotage. So we have to create more internal safety to allow ourselves to move through this. And worthiness, we hear, oh gosh, worthiness is just such a big theme in my life right now too, but we hear these stories. You have to earn the right to rest. You have to sacrifice yourself in order to be good. Your needs are burdensome. You are only valuable when you're being useful, and self-care is selfish. We hear these misaligned stories all the time from, again, dominant society, from media, from billionaires. Don't even get me started on, millennials just need to drink less coffee and get less avocado toast and things like that, right? Where are these stories coming from, and what are they? What are the sources benefiting by you believing those things? These are the real critical questions to ask. If you're struggling to receive good things because you don't believe you're worthy, you will continue to unconsciously or consciously reject opportunities, relationships, and support. Everyone is worthy of love. We need to take ownership when we do bad, harmful things to one another, but that does not mean we are not worthy of good things. And then pleasure. We have talked about pleasure in this series a lot. I'm a pleasure activist. I really believe that pleasure is the way that we fight back. I think it's activism. It's important. But we keep getting messages that pleasure is frivolous, it's sinful, it needs to be earned through suffering first. How many times do you tell yourself, I will allow myself to relax when I get through this really hard thing? I will sleep when I'm dead, right? That sort of mentality. We believe that we need to suffer to gain enjoyment. Following what feels good is irresponsible. I need to be a responsible person. I need to take care of all the things I need to take care of. I don't have time to feel good. We might have been taught that our body's desires can't be trusted for one reason or another. This can be that purity doctrine coming back in. So the sabotage ends up looking like you choosing what you're supposed to, what's supposed to be good for you over what actually nourishes you. And then you burn out and then you turn uh, to the fighter behaviors in order to soothe this deep ache of lack of enjoyment of your life. So we, again, want to let go of this cultural conditioning. I'm not going to have you reflect on these right here, right now, but you can take a screenshot if you would like, or, review these notes later in the slides. But I really invite you to identify your self-sabotage patterns. What do these really look like so that you can start to get a little bit more power back, that you can start to work with these parts of yourself instead of fighting against them. So questions like, what do you say you want, but consistently don't move toward? What do you say you want, but you consistently don't take steps to achieve? What excuses or stories do you tell yourself about why you can't have what you want? What behaviors do you repeat even though that they don't serve you? When things are going well, what do you do that ends up creating a problem? And what would become possible if you stopped this pattern? So these are really potent questions. I invite you to really sit with them, chew on them, journal them out. What are your what is your soul really longing for that you allow? It's not because you are not all saboteur, but that you keep allowing the saboteur part to run the show around. So you just never get there because you have that dream, that goal, that desire for a reason. And then you can start to get to know the why behind the pattern. So again, snap a screen if you want to journal on these. Ask that saboteur, that sabotaging part of you, what are you protecting me from? What are you worried or what do you fear will happen if I succeed, heal, or change? That question gives us the juicy info. What did you learn in the past that made this strategy necessary? And what do you need from me to feel safe enough to try something different? This is literally the kind of work we do in internal family systems therapy. This can be too heavy to handle on your own, especially when you're getting started. So, as always, I like to say, reach out to a professional, myself included in there. If you need extra help or support or structure around this, we don't want to work with the exiles without support. But if you're getting to know a manager or a saboteur part and you feel comfortable to ask these questions, you will get such great information. So, for example, if I sit with the part of me that didn't write for like a decade, and we're back on board. So I'm just kind of connecting with that part from the past. And I asked, what are you protecting me from? Failure. I'm protecting you from failing to write the book. Okay. What do you fear will happen if I succeeded in writing the book? Well, people would be disappointed in it. It's not good enough. Uh, there's going to be criticism. Okay, well, what did I learn in the past that made this strategy of just not writing necessary? Oh, well, one of my parents very early on gave me this narrative that my writing wasn't going to get me anywhere and I should rely on another form of work. So I just didn't feel like writing was even an opportunity or an option. Okay, well, what do you need from me to feel safe enough to try something different? Well, I need to know that even if our family is disappointed or they disagree with us, that we're going to be okay. Okay, I can work with that. I can reassure myself that we're going to be okay, even if our family doesn't agree with what we're doing. So, going through this process, you'll notice I literally had a hand on my chest there. This is how I connect with my parts. When I'm touching base with my parts inside, I often do close my eyes. I put a hand on my chest, and that's how I go in and talk. You can do this in any way that you want. You could write the question down and be like, okay, this is me, self. I'm writing the question down, and now I am asking this of my part. I'm going to change pen colors and I'm going to write down what this part says. Be flexible, play, get to know your parts. You will learn so much. Our common fears. So we talked earlier about patriarchy and capitalism and like all these things we try to fit in, but these are really the ultimate fears that drive the sabotage. So this is more our exiles, what they have experienced in the past, what they are worried will happen. And you can probably swap the word fear for another word if it lands more for you, like the shame of this, the worry I'll disappoint someone with this, the fear of whatever word works for you. But we're going to go with fear here. So, fear of failure. If I don't try, I can't fail. I mean, that was what that part that I was just touching base with in the past that felt like she couldn't write. The reality was she was failing to create books by not trying. And there's this belief that therefore we're not failing, but we've kind of failed by actual reality. We didn't meet our goal. We failed at our goal or our dream or our desire or whatever that might be because our fear of failure led us to not start at all. So it's one of those interesting fears where the fear itself is creating the outcome of the fear itself. And so it's unique in that way, but we need to be gentle around it. Fear of success. If I succeed, everything will change and I will lose control. I know a lot of people, this has come up recently as well, who are on disability, for example, and they are worried that if they actually start to pursue their dreams, if they put out their art, their writing, their coaching services, their whatever it might be, that they'll succeed and that they will lose access to healthcare or benefits. And good Lord, the desire to soapbox on how that should never be the case in the first place. It's here. I'm not going to go there, but suffice it to say, I really don't think it's right that we put people in these situations where it's either I get my basic needs met or I get to pursue my dreams. That should not be the case, but fear of success comes with, like, I think all the time, oh gosh, if 100,000 people decided to purchase a product from me tomorrow, like, things would crash and burn. I don't have the infrastructure for that. And that can keep me in fear of success. Oh no, what if I make it too big? What if things change too fast and I lose control? But then we're creating the outcome. We're not succeeding because we're playing small, right? So you can see here how these fears kind of create themselves. Fear of responsibility. If I step into my power, too much will be expected of me. Yeah, comment here. Amazing how many of these can show up in different situations at different times. Yeah, like these are they're practically universal for us humans. We all experience these more than likely at a different point in time. But yeah, like the fear of responsibility, I think probably comes from either people who are taking on too much responsibility, they're over functioning, or they are under functioning and not yet taking ownership for what is theirs to be responsible for. So, either way, there can be this fear that if we start to show off our capability, more will be expected of us. And I go back to boundaries and your ability to say no. Fear of visibility. If people see me, they'll reject me, they'll judge me, they'll stalk me, harass me, right? This community example for me today. I really feared visibility for like a solid year and a half after that, and I had already feared visibility in my younger years because I was a survivor of childhood trauma with somebody who made violent threats to me. So I was afraid to be visible, afraid to be seen because I was afraid to be harmed. There is some reality in this, again, especially if you're a survivor. And can we really afford at the soul level to continue to play small because we are afraid to be seen by the wrong people? What if we're seen by the right people? So that is a message for me, a message for you. Fear of inadequacy. Well, I'm not good enough, so why bother? Right? If you have been put down again and again and again, you will likely not want to try. If you have been made to feel like everything you do is not good enough, yeah, it's going to be challenging. So, this is where you get to learn to be good enough for yourself and what you want to bother with on behalf of yourself, because you are worthy of showing up for yourself. Fear of abandonment. If I change, people will leave me. Here's the thing that I've learned absolutely 100% over the course of my like decade in mental health work is if people abandon you because you change for the better, eventually you're not going to care. You're going to care right away. You're going to care right away if you are stepping into this magical, powerful version of yourself and all of a sudden your friend group leaves or your family starts talking down to you more. Of course, you're going to be upset by that. But if you are really in the change, if you are really stepping into your power over time, those people abandoning you, you start to see as a gift. You start to go, oh my gosh, thank God they saw themselves out. Thank God they showed me their true colors, that they can't handle me when I'm healthy. They need me powerless. They need me depleted. They need me playing small. I know it sounds radical, but please be abandoned by those people. You will feel clearer over time, even if it feels really bad right away. It is, again, 100% of the time across the board. I have yet to meet somebody, work with somebody, or experience in myself any time where somebody left me or a client because we changed for the better that we didn't celebrate down the road, even if it hurt right now. And then, of course, last but not least, our fear of disappointment. It's just safer to not want anything. If we don't want anything, if we don't ask for anything, if we have zero expectations ever, we'll just we'll never be disappointed. And that is still not true. Again, as we read down the list, these fears often create the outcome that they're trying to protect from in the first place. And this is why we get to negotiate with our parts and say, hey, buddy, system update. I know that your core intention here is to protect me. I know your core intention is to keep me invisible because you're worried that people will reject me. I see that. And I am ready to reach the right people, right? We can negotiate system update. Those people are gone now. What they think really doesn't matter, right? System update. Let the parts of us that don't know the information hear the information that they need to hear. All right. So our self-sabotage and shame cycle, and maybe shame is not the right word for you. Maybe it is fear. Maybe it's disappointment. Again, use the words that are right for you. But the cycle probably looks something like this. You have a desire or a goal. Maybe you get started on it. Maybe you start the process, maybe you don't. Either way, you have that desire and goal, and at some point, a protective part kicks in, sabotages your progress, or stops you from starting in the first place. You feel an emotion, shame, fear, disappointment about the sabotage occurring. That shame, fear, disappointment confirms the exile's core wound. I'm not good enough. I'm a failure. I can't do this. And then managers step in to try and criticize you harder, to try to manage more, to try and get you back on track. But the exile has been accessed, the pain is there, and the firefighters step in to numb the exile's emotions. More sabotage occurs, rinse and repeat. So your cycle might look a little different, but ultimately, there's an impetus, a desire to achieve something. At some point, the sabotage kicks in. The managers and the firefighters have a little tug of war trying to keep the exile at bay. The emotions are still there. The sabotage occurs, and then we repeat. And this is part of why our IFS cycle, our internal family system parts cycle, looks like manager into exile, into firefighter, into manager, into exile, into firefighter, because we're really kind of running a loop. And that is ultimately normal. That's being human, running these loops. But where can we break the cycles that look like criticism, that look like shame and fear and disappointment and on these things that we don't want, that don't really ultimately serve us? We need more compassion. If you have been following me for a while, you may have heard I call it my famous phrase because it's the phrase that's been with me the longest as a professional, which is that compassion does not equal enabling. And that goes both ways. Compassion does not equal enabling others. Compassion does not equal enabling ourselves. So, self compassion is understanding why you're sabotaging without excusing the harm that you're causing yourself. Self compassion is being kind to yourself while still taking responsibility. It's acknowledging the wound and choosing to move towards healing. And it's holding yourself accountable with gentleness, not with bullying, not with more negative self talk, not with punishment, but with, okay, we're going to work on this and we're going to keep working on this until we see this shift because this is important to us. Enabling, on the other hand, is using your past as an excuse to avoid growth now. So this could be, well, I can't move on beyond this because I was abused as a child. Okay, there's some reality there, right? We may have experienced a trauma or an abuse, but is that the reason why we can't do something? Maybe genuinely some things, but is it the excuse for all things? And this is where we get into this pattern of like, I can't heal because I'm still feeling victimized by the past. I'm using my past as a reason why I just keep getting to run this loop over and over again. It doesn't feel good. That's the thing. Like, this doesn't serve us, it doesn't help us move towards healing. And then, enabling can look like letting protective parts run wild without boundaries, just letting our parts run the show, drive the bus without self intervention, self being the most adult, calm, compassionate, connected, calm, courageous, confident, creative, et cetera, et cetera. I'm going to repeat all of the words, but really having that access to self is where self compassion can be there. If we're just letting our parts run the show, that's enabling. Refusing to examine our patterns, enabling. Blaming others for our choices, enabling. And again, this is ownership can be so hard, especially if you're a survivor, especially if you've experienced trauma, because it can be very easy to say, well, I experienced this bad thing. I have this health condition. I have PTSD. I have this or that. So and so did this to me. My mom did this when I was 5. My dad said that thing when I was 15. And suddenly we have told ourselves a story that we can't live our lives. And the saboteur eats that up because their job is to keep us in the status quo. So, again, if your status quo has been trauma and suffering and blame and shame and fear and doubt and all of these things, your parts want to keep you there, but you don't have to stay there. Compassion supports change, enabling prevents it. So, some tools for breaking these cycles. First, awareness. Notice the pattern without judgment. Name it. My self saboteur is triggered right now. Get curious about it. Step 2, compassion. Thank that part for trying to protect you. Hey, thanks for trying to guard this wound. I hear the fear, but you don't have to let it run the show. You can validate, hey, I see you. Yep, totally get where that's coming from. Step 3, intervention. Pause. Name what's happening. What is this part actually afraid of? What are we running from right now? Offer some reassurance. I can handle this. We've got this. And choose one small aligned action despite the fear. Again, we've talked about this in past episodes. So small and insignificant and bite sized, you could handle it. You could laugh it off. Yeah, I can do this one little thing. Step 4, repeat, repetition. Start impossibly small and repeat the new behavior consistently until your system starts to go, oh, we do show up for ourselves. We do got this, right? It takes patience because old patterns can take years to form. They can take years to break. Your compassionate intervention plan. If you notice a specific sabotage pattern coming in, make your plan here. I will pause and breathe, interrupt. How are you going to interrupt the automatic response? Name it. This is my saboteur part. This is my playing small part. This is my procrastinator part trying to protect me. Okay, get curious. What is this part worried about right now? Offer that compassion. Thank you for helping, trying to help. I've got this. Take your action and reflect. What did I learn? How did my parts respond? How did it feel? So, just reiterating this pattern of really relating to your parts in a different way. You've probably heard me use the example of the kid coming up to tug on your sleeve again and again and again until you give attention. So, turn right in. Hey, what's going on, part? Why are we having this response? All right, so let's just drop into a quick meditation here. We're going to connect with the energy of sabotage. As pleasant as it is, right? So I invite you here and now just to be with yourself, with this present moment, and with ever so gentle awareness of a way that you've been sabotaging yourself lately. Maybe you've been kicking the can down the road on a project. Maybe you've been relying on substances to numb a little more than you'd like to, and that's causing you to not be able to move forward in your goals. Maybe you have been keeping your voice silent, not putting yourself out there because you're afraid of what might happen. Just notice, where are you holding yourself back? What action or inaction are you taking that is keeping you from realizing a goal or a dream? And right here, right now, there's nothing to do with this other than breathe and be with it. Acknowledge this pattern. I see you, my little inner saboteur. I see you. Thank you for trying to protect me from whatever you're trying to protect me from. And if it feels safe to do so, maybe even ask this part, what are you trying to protect me from? Whether an answer comes clearly or not, just thinking this part yet again. I understand your intention is to keep me safe. And what's one bit of support that you could give to this saboteur? What do they need from you to feel a little more okay? And then just consciously letting go of this part of this practice of any need to do. We're just going to offer some energy here. You might pick a color that feels good, that feels vibrant, that feels peaceful. You might pick a smell, just something here to anchor an energy of ease, an energy of compassion, of healing. And I invite you to play with the breath. As you breathe in, imagine you're breathing in that scent or color, that it's collecting within you any stuck, sticky, or stagnant energy. And as you exhale, you blow it out. You relax your shoulders. You let your jaw soften. You inhale, you call in all that is good for you, all that is nourishing and peaceful. You exhale, you let go of limitations, negative stories, held patterns. Allowing your deepest inhale of the day, calling yourself back home, calling all power back into yourself. Exhale, letting go of anything that is not you. And then just coming gently back fully into the body, head to toe, and reminding yourself any attempts at sabotage are a part of me trying to protect me. And I set the intention to get to know these parts more, to notice them when they arise with curiosity and compassion. If it feels good to do so, maybe give yourself a hug around that, seal it in, that you're going to notice yourself more, that you are going to pay attention to the needs of your system. And then if the eyes are closed, you can gently blink them back open. And take a moment to do a nice no tiger twist. Looking up and back, down and around, to signal to the nervous system that you are safe right here, right now, and nothing bad is happening. So sometimes we just need to notice. We don't need to be super direct. And I want to just reassure you here. If change feels impossible, and sometimes it really does. So when change feels impossible, please remember the following. Your sabotage patterns developed over years, and change takes time. Setbacks are part of the process. It's not a proof that you have failed, that you're bad and wrong. You are not broken, but you are protected by what are potentially some outdated strategies. And your parts can liberate, they can heal. However, parts of you need to trust you with that capital S self before they can release those old strategies because they're there to protect. So, small, consistent shifts create more lasting change than dramatic overhauls because that builds safety into your system. Back, I don't even remember what module at this point, probably somewhere around episode 10 or so, we were talking about how we need to create micro changes for our nervous system because otherwise we get overloaded and we dig into our old patterns even more as protection. So progress is not linear. Some days you will choose aligned actions. Some days your saboteur will win and might take the wheel. Be compassionate first. That is the way that we begin to change and break the pattern. Sabotage is not your identity. You have parts that have learned to protect you through sabotage. You have wounds that haven't been fully healed yet. You have outdated strategies that once kept you safe. And you have the capacity to choose differently. So please remember your patterns are not you, they can be transformed. This week, as an integration invitation, I invite you to notice one sabotage pattern without trying to fix it. Just observe it. Ask, what are you protecting me from? And journal what wound or fear sits beneath that pattern that is rising to be healed. Practice compassion, thank the part for its intention, and choose to experiment with one small aligned action despite your fear. So that brings us to the end of episode 21. Next time, we're going to talk about expanding your circle of influence, right? Which to expand our circle of influence, we need to not be sabotaging ourselves. So we'll explore more ownership, the last in our ownership and Aether arc about accountability and repair when you do cause harm. We all cause harm, it happens. How do we stay accountable? Service is spiritual practice and a path to wholeness, building authentic communities and connections across differences, breaking out of echo chambers, becoming better ancestors, and using our influence responsibly. So we will be pairing ownership and aligned action in episode 22. So I will see you back here for that here soon. Until next time, I see you, I believe in you, and as always, I am cheering you on. May you be so kind to yourself, so compassionate, so tender, and see yourself, own yourself, be yourself. All right, for now, bye, my friends.